Bearcat Bounce Podcast. Back at it again. Happy Monday. Happy Monday following, how about this? Masterful, a glorious French Open final, Roland Garros final. Just unbelievable cinema Monday. Happy Monday as well, following a few commitments on the football side of things in the 2026 class. Happy Monday following Chad telling us all about his beautiful concert-going adventure. Happy Monday as well, where a little something happened on Friday that was a long time coming, and it's going to have a lot of people talking. And it's also a Monday as well, where we're going to bring everyone together. We're going to sit down. We're going to chat. We're going to bring back an old friend who is always a friend and is for some, myself, a best friend. So, you know what? Without further ado, we're going to bring in the squad. We've got the crew, plus a very, 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 very special guest. Aaron Smith, Chad Brendel, and senior writer for The Athletic, Justin Williams. Gentlemen, how are we?
Senior writer? Did you get a promotion?
Yeah. Thank you for getting my title right, Brent. Chad doesn't acknowledge.
He doesn't?
I mean, what like if you're there for 4 years, you're a senior? Is this like college now, or
senior writer and Ryan Royer replacement?
Yes. That's
yeah.
correct.
Well, he'll be here in 10 minutes.
You better be ready to riff with Jay Will here in a bit. Be fun.
I'm sure Justin's got some questions.
Yeah.
I just, as always, when I see Royer, I want to talk. What was it? 2021 spring game. When was the Royer MVP performance?
Unbelievable.
Royer versus Landon Fickle.
Yeah. Giving it the best.
Is Royer getting any back pay from the house settlement? Has he talked about it?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him.
I texted him over the weekend. He said yes. Oh yeah. He said, oh yeah. Let me know when you want to come hang out. I said, I'll be there. You let me know. You buy the flight. But Chad, man, how are we? How was the weekend? Long time no see, man. Golly, just miss you in one BCJ pod. It's like I haven't seen you in a month.
Yeah, I'm good. It was a busy week. Weekend was good, kind of uneventful weekend, which those are always maybe the best weekends when there's not a lot that goes on. So it took a couple days to recover from Kendrick and SZA. So
fair.
I'm back to full speed.
Hey man, take as long as you need. Full speed is, we can get you at 50% tonight. We'll I think Justin will be able to carry the rest of the weight. So no worries there. Aaron, how are we, sir?
I'm good. Just ready to get this show on the road. Can't wait to talk all the judiciary system with one Justin Williams.
Yeah. That's one way to put it. I had to bust out the judiciary system for dummies playbook today and just really rehash exactly what the heck I'm going to be saying. I'm a guy who likes to sit back and wait for it all to happen. Then we can talk about it. And I guess it's like all happening, but it's not fully happening. Gosh, I can't wait to get Justin's full thoughts on it. But before that happens, Justin, long time no see on the BBP. How are we, man?
Doing great. Been keeping an eye on you guys. Everything's going great, it seems, and always happy when I can pop on and talk legalese and Roland Garros with you guys.
Golly, did you watch that yesterday?
not all 5.5 hours of it, but I caught a little bit.
I busted out my first cup of coffee when I watched that. Started with a couple mimosas. What was supposed to be a handful ended up being like 2 handfuls by the end of that damn thing. It was unbelievable, though. That was
Brent had to take a nap Brent had to take a nap when it was over.
Had the Pacers game later. I said I do need a nap before that. So, golly, what a fun time that was. I might have a little dip in the riffing later, but you know what, Justin? If you need to take a drive somewhere and talk with one of your many connects on exactly what's been transpiring over this past weekend, I think you might want to head over to Danco Transmission and Auto Care first. Have Danco Joe check it out. Your man, our boy, the legend. Danco Transmission Auto Care. Get you $10 off the next oil change, 10% off your next fixing. Danco Joe. mention Chad, mention Aaron, mention you know what, you can mention Ryan, even though he's not here. Maybe mention Brian Seeley and see if that will help you get that $10 off your oil change over at Danco Transmission and Auto Care. But let's dive right into it. Justin, a lot has happened. Friday was a long time coming, I think, is what a lot of people might be able to say. But go ahead and break down for us. Just Friday comes, the settlement is finally reached, and where are you? What exactly is the next set in motion that you have to have? Because golly, you busted out 2 beautiful articles just bang bang right afterwards, and another one today. So it was like we said, it was like a marathon and then a full sprint once we reached there.
Yeah, fortunately, Friday night, Judge Wilkin waited until just after got the kids to bed, and I think any parent knows, like, Friday night, end of the week, you get your kids to bed, then you just want to check and see what's popping off for work. So
right.
I do appreciate her waiting at least till then. It was one of those things where we've been waiting. It feels like at least a few weeks now that we felt like it could pop up anytime. And when it didn't happen, you kind of just resign yourself to, like, all right, maybe this will drag on. And it's West Coast time, but so once it gets after 5 p.m. on the West Coast, I think people kind of let their guard down, and we're like, all right, this isn't going to happen this week. The court's closed. Maybe it'll happen next week. And for whatever reason, about 9:15 p.m. Eastern, her decision to approve the settlement hit the docket. Fortunately, we had been prepared, had been waiting for a long time for something to happen. So we had some things kind of in place and in motion. But yeah, it was one of those where scrambling a little bit to maybe bare bones editor's crew on a Friday night to try and figure out how to get this stuff out there. But obviously we've been working on it for a long time, and we were ready to roll when it happened.
Tonk, thanks for the $4.99. Every time Justin is on, I remember to do my dishes.
That's right. That's it.
Accurate.
I'm not putting the kids to bed. I'm doing dishes.
Is that what you were getting ready to do when the house settlement dropped? Had you opened your first Cincy Light Lime of the night?
I hadn't yet, probably, fortunately. But yeah, I was probably like angling to the sink to get the dishes going, and then the phone starts blowing up. So
take us through this before we get into the minutia, at a 5th grade level, very basic. Do you guys still have to write at a 5th grade level? Like, are you still instructed to do that? Do you write at like a 9th grade level just out of spite? And at a 5th grade level, take us through what this all means for UC.
This is when I listen really, really intently. So go ahead.
So I assume at this point most people are relatively familiar with the basis of the house settlement, but
Brent is not.
Okay, so we'll go 30, maybe 60,000 feet. Bare bones, settlement in 2 parts. There's the back pay for former athletes who were not able to earn NIL when they were college athletes. And so that the $2.8 billion number that you probably see floating around, that's going to those former athletes. Kind of the more relevant part for fans now and moving forward is schools can begin directly paying college athletes. So, the century of amateurism that college sports had kind of clung to, that's gone now. $20 million a year in year one per school can go directly from University of Cincinnati to, Brendan Sorsby, Dante Corleone, name your player in any sport. They can divide it however they want. And so that's kind of the big headline is schools can pay athletes directly now. I think what'll be interesting going forward, and what I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into, is the other kind of part of the settlement looking forward is it intends to stamp out this current state of NIL, pay for play, where it's pretty much collectives paying athletes to either transfer to their school or go to their school of choice and play. And there's really not like what would be considered true NIL, name, image, and likeness. Hey, I'm going to promote your local business or barbecue shop or whatever and get paid for that. That's obviously not really what's been going on with NIL. And the NCAA and the power conferences, they kind of felt like it had gotten out of control. They had no guardrails. So this was their solution. Schools can pay athletes at a annual capped amount. And then also any outside NIL deals, whether it's through a company or an organization or a collective, has to go into a clearinghouse if it's over $600, and that clearinghouse can say, yeah, this is a normal, valid business purpose. It's a reasonable range of compensation. You get paid that. Or if it's, the collective wanting to give $2 million to a star player to come to the university, the clearinghouse will say, actually, under our new rules, that is not allowed. And so I think that's going to be the big interesting thing moving forward. How does that work? Does that work? What does it do to an industry that had, whether you thought it got out of control or was going the direction it should, it had obviously changed a lot in recent years.
So they're getting money from the universities and they're working to earn that money, but they're not employees. We can't call them employees.
Right. It's not a salary cap. These are not, they're not signing contracts. It's NIL, it's revenue sharing. And so the way that it's kind of presented is the money that athletic departments bring in, the revenue they generate from television contracts and ticket sales and sponsorships, that money, or at least a chunk of it, can now be paid out to athletes. But you have the same kind of cocked eyebrow that many people have, which is like, all right, then you're clearly just paying an athlete to play for you. And again, that's another thing that kind of the next judiciary issue that college sports is going to run up against is, are these athletes employees or are they students? And that's all part of this too.
Let's
I read
not forget
something
that it's a
throughout.
nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other issue that schools are running into is, for years they've had to spend as much money as they brought in to kind of explain or justify why you're not paying the athletes, and now all of a sudden they have a new $20 million expense on top of what they were doing, and so they're kind of trying to retrofit. It's a lot of living in both worlds at once, right? This is the old way that they used to do it. Now here's the new way, and how are they going to kind of figure out how to do that financially?
So Aaron and I talked about this last night, and I still don't remember where I said it. Maybe you'll remember where the phrase came from, but this is now essentially like the beginning, like the starting point. And there is a 10-year window on this settlement that allows kind of a period of time for a framework to be structured for what this looks like going forward. Do you see this as kind of the beginning? I know a lot of people see it as the end. Like, okay, now the settlement is here. Like, this is the end. Do you see this as more of the beginning of what college sports is going to look like?
So I actually think this is like, not the middle, but it's almost like a way station. This is the stopgap. So clearly college sports needs some kind of major reset. We're not sure what that looks like. Maybe that involves Congress, passing some federal legislation that sets the settlement in stone and actually will allow the settlement to work as it intends, because Congress decides, hey, the NCAA and the power conferences, they did a lot of work on this. We actually like where this is going. Yeah, we're going to pass federal law that basically says this is going to do everything you want it to do. Or maybe all this stuff blows up and it turns into like football breaking off and kind of all these super league private equity models get involved. And in 5 to 10 years, the SEC and Big Ten or the Power Four are off playing each other in football. And then, everything else kind of figures it out with the other sports. I don't know what exactly that future will be, but to me, this feels like college sports had to do something. This isn't the full hard reset that it needs to do or it's going to be forced to do, but this was something that it could do to kind of keep things moving forward. It's not, it is vastly different. It's not amateurism anymore. The schools are paying athletes, but it's also not like a complete hard reset into minor leagues or, a completely fractured system, which is what it might end up being sometime in this next 10-year period.
The news got out today that Greg Sankey and Donald Trump played golf over the weekend. With your power, I'm sure you were there. What was that round of golf like between those two guys?
Look, West Siders will know when all you play is Newman Golf Course over here on the West Side. Like Bedminster's, it might as well be Everest. So I didn't get the call up. I let Pete, the AD from Notre Dame, go in my place. But
it's very kind of you.
Yeah, this. So I wrote about this over the weekend too. We now have all three branches of government like meddling in college sports. You have, obviously, this is the House case was passed through a federal judge in California. You have the NCAA and power conferences lobbying Congress to get involved and to pass a bill. And now you have Trump, whether he's talking about starting a commission with Nick Saban or whether he's golfing with Greg Sankey and the AD of Notre Dame, like, he's now kind of circling college sports. And so everyone is kind of like looking around or circling overhead, but no one, I guess other than the courts, have like fully kind of dove into this yet. And I think it'll be interesting if Trump decides he does want to get involved. What does that look like? There was, when this initially kind of started, when Saban, or when he did the commencement speech at Alabama and met with Saban, there was kind of this rush of, oh, he's just going to try and pass an executive order and then that'll get shot down by the courts. And then it turned out that actually, no, he's kind of been thinking about this, and there's maybe this commission that's going to start, and maybe it'll work with Congress. I don't think we know exactly what that's going to be, but it's clear that all of the major powers are now, this is on their radar. And that's honestly what the NCAA and what the power conferences wanted. Like, that's why they did this settlement, so that they can go to Congress and say, for a long time you said we weren't doing anything. Here's what we have done, and we believe this is why Congress should intervene. Now, depending on who you talk to, there's a lot of opinions varying whether Congress should get involved, or whether Congress wants to get involved, or whether they will be able to do anything if they do get involved. But like, everyone's paying attention to this now, which is what the powers in college sports want.
Hey, it worked for the USFL.
Sure. Well, now that everyone is paying attention, Justin, let's do a couple keywords. It just become a dictionary for us. College Sports Commission is one. Another one is Deloitte. And then the final one, it's not a new streaming service, but it is affiliated with all involved. That is NIL Go. Go ahead. Take away those three. Break them down, their connection to each other, and how much you see they're going to, because it seems like those are the driving forces that are going to put the quote unquote guardrails up on all of this new way that is.
Yeah, so the College Sports Commission is basically this new entity that was started. Its goal is to implement and enforce the settlement terms. So all the stuff we're talking about with NIL and with the revenue sharing cap and all that, the College Sports Commission is in charge of that. Basically started by the power conferences. The board is the power conference commissioners, and it really takes away a lot of the oversight of all of this from the NCAA. So part of this, whether by force or willingly, is the NCAA kind of ceding some of its oversight and power. They're still going to be in charge of championships. They're still going to be in charge of eligibility. It's not like the NCAA is going away, but it's also the power conferences, again, kind of having more influence and more say over this, and they've started this commission. And so as part of the College Sports Commission, there is the NIL Go. That's the clearinghouse platform we talked about, where college athletes are supposed to declare any NIL deals they have from outside parties of $600 or more. And then Deloitte, the accounting firm, which, I'm sure Ryan's got some Roth IRAs and capital accounts wrapped up in, they manage this clearinghouse. And so they're the ones that are like working it and checking it and deciding whether something looks good or whether they want to decline it. And so the College Sports Commission is really kind of like the new entity oversight of the House settlement, and in a lot of ways just big time college sports. And you mentioned that Brian Seeley, he's the guy from Major League Baseball that they hired to be the commissioner or the CEO of this. So he's in place. He reports to the power conference commissioners, and this is now the entity that's going to lay down the hammer if they feel like teams break the rules, or make sure that everything's kind of staying in line. So it really shifts a lot away from the NCAA overseeing college football, college sports.
So all NIL deals that were done before July 1, or I guess at this point, those are good to go, untouchable at this point, right? Even
Correct.
If those are multi-year NIL deals, it's still under that umbrella, or?
With the collective, I mean, we're seeing less and less in that because of like the Nico Iamaleava situation, where right. I think more and more, whether it's these direct rev share agreements with universities or with collectives, a lot of them are 1-year deals anymore, just because there was not a lot of faith that multi-year deals would, hold up legally, or that players would honor them. But yeah, anything that was signed essentially before Friday at 9:00, doesn't go through the clearinghouse, which is why you saw in the last transfer cycle with football, but even with basketball and baseball, like a lot of these collectives, a lot of these boosters were basically like emptying the clip, right? Like they were just kind of whatever they had, they were flooding the market with it because they felt like this would be their, maybe not their last chance to use some of that money, but their last chance to do it in a pretty seamless, above board kind of way.
This what's the word that they're using for it? The agreement between conferences not to break the rules.
Yeah, it's participation agreement, affiliation agreement. It's been called a couple different things, right?
What do you make of that? What is there any? It sounds like they're all going to sign it. Is there any chance they actually listen to it, pay attention to it, follow the rules?
It is kind of interesting because, all the talk, there was a big press conference today with the power conference commissioners, and even leading up to it, the people who have kind of been invested or putting this settlement together, they'll talk about how we really need buy-in from our member schools and our administrations. And we have that. Like they feel like everyone's on board and they want to do it. But just in case they weren't on board, or just to make sure they're really, really extra on board, we're going to have you sign an agreement that basically says we're not going to sue the conferences or the NCAA if they make a decision we don't like. That's kind of the same deal because of the settlement. Athletes can't sue. Like they're bound by the terms of the settlement. They're part of this class settlement. So if an athlete doesn't like a decision by the clearinghouse, they can't say, well, I'm going to sue you. And now with these agreements, allegedly, the universities also can't say, well, I'm going to sue you. That isn't what Tennessee did with like the Nico situation. It was the state attorney general that got involved. But I think what they're hoping is that if the University of Tennessee isn't behind the scenes, maybe like nudging the AG to get involved, then maybe they'll be less inclined. However, this doesn't stop collectives or outside companies or a state government, state attorney general from deciding, we actually don't like that decision you made, so we're going to sue the SEC or the ACC or the NCAA. So whether it actually ends up working, I don't know. I just thought it was a little bit interesting that there was so much talk about this support. Everyone's bought into the settlement. Everyone wants to be on board. Then why did we have to have these participation agreements? Why did we have to have these affiliation agreements? So clearly there was like a sense of, you better get on board with this because we're doing everything we can to make sure that you are.
So it's also a sign that we are going to break the law, and we're just going to rely on you to help us not go to court over these things that we're going to do that limit the athlete's ability to make money when the courts have specifically told them, stop limiting the ability of the athletes to make money.
And that's why the recent Tennessee NIL law was interesting, because it kind of like saw all of this coming. So yeah, Tennessee is going to sign this affiliation agreement with the SEC saying we won't raise a stink. But also the NIL law that was passed basically made it so that Tennessee can't get sued. If like the attorney general can't sue the University of Tennessee, or like an outside party can't sue Tennessee. So sure, Tennessee's not going to cause any problems, but if there are problems, it's still not going to fall back on them. It's actually going to fall back on the SEC or, right, the NCAA or whoever someone might go after. So yeah, I think the upshot is this isn't going to solve all the legal problems. Like I talked to a lawyer a couple weeks ago, and he was like, the whole point of this settlement was to limit the legal problems the NCAA and power conferences are facing. And actually, in reality, it might cause more of them moving forward. So we'll see.
More.
So 20.5 million is the cap, or I guess not cap. I don't want to say
rev cap, not a salary cap.
Right.
Revenue cap. Right.
Yes, rev cap.
Salary cap only happens with collective bargaining.
Yep.
In order for there to be collective bargaining, there has to be a union. In order for there to be a union, you have to have employees.
With rules and laws. Yeah, right. Yeah, makes sense. But 20.5.
Are they going to 1099 these guys? Is that what this is, Justin? Real quick.
For
rev share.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. There's certain, another thing the NIL laws are doing is there's certain ones that are exempting NIL money from taxes. So like this happens in the NBA and NFL, right?
Yeah.
When it's free
Everybody
agency,
goes
people are
for
like,
it.
oh, go sign in Florida or in Texas because there's no
Texas,
state
yeah.
income tax.
Avoid
So maybe
California.
maybe there's going to be these like states that it's like, oh, I'm going to, go sign at North Southwest U because they don't have NIL tax. I don't know. But yes, there's going to be some kind of tax involved, most likely for most of these college athletes.
Sorry, Brent. Go ahead. My bad.
You're good. So 20.5, obviously, and the big football schools, or pretty much all the football schools, will allocate a bunch of that, a large percentage of that to football. Do you see a drastic advantage for the basketball only schools going forward? Because, obviously football is the one that brings in all the money, which I guess in sense you could say, okay, well, St. John's doesn't have a football program, but they're still going to somehow be able to bring in enough money to the point where certain football schools can't really compete against these basketball schools going after the same recruit. I don't know. The whole thing to me seems like it's like Chad was saying, loopholes will be introduced yet again.
Yeah, I might end up being wrong on this. I don't really see that as a big deal because of what you said. Like people have talked about, oh, the Big East is at an advantage because it doesn't have to worry about football in this $20.5 million thing. But yeah, the teams in the SEC and the Big Ten that have the most money, it's because they have football. Like that's where
Right.
the money's coming from, is the football part of the TV deal. And so, sure, maybe, UConn can put together a bigger rev share chunk than most other basketball programs can. But also, like, okay, so say UConn can put together $10 million, and under rev share, Kentucky can, or Kansas or North Carolina can only give out $5 or $6 million. I am not convinced they're not going to find a way to, whether it's above board through the approved clearinghouse or whether it's, back to the old days of the bag man. Do we really think that like Kentucky and North Carolina and Kansas basketball are going to get beat out by the Big East because they don't have football rev share? I don't think so. I don't think most of the, Big East or, maybe Gonzaga or St. Mary's and, have a little bit of an advantage because same deal, they're basketball focused schools and they have a little bit bigger, fan base or donation base. I just don't think the gap is going to be that big for those schools that don't have football because the revenue coming in isn't what the football schools have.
So in your estimation, if you just had to throw out a blind guess, what number over $600 do you think gets flagged? Like if AJ DeBance is coming in next year, not this year, like, do you think that they say, oh, can we give him $2 million? And then that flag, or do they have to? It just seems to. It's a crazy scenario in my mind.
No, it's a good question, and I think part of what they have said with the clearinghouse is that as more and more deals get declared, it's going to have a better understanding of the market, and like it could technically use. All right, so say a professional athlete's doing a deal with Nike or Gatorade or whatever, it could maybe even use that as like a reference for, is this a thing? Right. The issue is, most of the deals that have been done like through collectives, there's no valid business purpose. There's no, range of compensation that makes sense. You're basically saying, I'm giving this guy $3 million to come play football or basketball or whatever at my school. And what do they have to do? Oh, they have to tweet out how they love the collective and, maybe sign a football for us that we raffle off. Like the clearinghouse that's the stuff it's just not going to fly. I don't know what the number is that it gets to. It's much lower than the number of what these NIL deals have been historically. What I think is interesting is like, is there a time where an outside business, whether it's like a local restaurant or a car dealership or something like that, you look at Cincinnati where there are some big Fortune 500 companies that, might be doing business with the Bearcats. Like if someone does a deal with them, what constitutes, a basketball player being in a commercial or a football player coming to a restaurant and signing autographs? Like what is the level that's going to be allowed? I honestly have no idea. They haven't really said, but the sense that they've given is, the way things were done previously, if it was like a deal with an outside organization, not a collective, but like a company, local, national, whatever, I think they said something like 70% of those deals, a large majority of these deals would have been approved under like the clearinghouse. Okay. But under the collective deals, I can't remember, one of them was 70, one of them was 90, but like under these deals, 70% of the collective deals would have been denied under the clearinghouse. So they're making it very clear, like the collectives are what we're trying to kind of change with this settlement. And what I'm curious to be is, do collectives test this above board? Like, does a collective still try and give an athlete $1 million and have them declare it to the clearinghouse and test if the clearinghouse is going to deny it? Or do we not get athletes declaring deals? Or do we go back to the way it used to work and, money's going under the table? I think that's what's going to be interesting to see.
Does $1 million fit into a McDonald's bag?
Depends on how you put it in there, Chad.
Well, so this actually, here's a little sneak peek, something I wrote for The Athletic. It's going to run tomorrow. Like, what's kind of interesting is what the past, 3 or 4 years have done under NIL. Is it basically like taught boosters how to get better at dropping bags? Like, the whole collective framework was just legitimizing what bagmen were doing and, in secret under the table before. Right. Now, maybe it has to kind of go back into the shadows, but like, I talked to one source that said if a booster wants to wire a player $25,000 to his Venmo account, who's policing that? Who's forcing them to declare that? And who's telling them that they can't do that?
Right.
Maybe the clearinghouse will do that. Maybe the settlement will work and it will stamp that stuff out. But like, the history of college sports suggests that it's going to be really hard to police that stuff. And NIL era up until now has actually allowed boosters and bagmen to get better at doing that. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Can you Venmo $500 a day for as long as humanly possible?
This was another great question. Yeah,
Venmo does have a cap. I'll let you know that. So you'll have to go other routes: Cash App, PayPal,
Zelle, maybe. I don't know. Apparently, there is something in place that won't allow like a company to just spam $599 deals to an athlete, 60,000 times. I don't know exactly again what that will look like. They haven't said, but yeah, it's if the settlement works as intended, those deals won't happen anymore. The question everyone has, myself included, is will it work as intended?
Another fun buzzword that has been growing with the NIL is transfer portal. What, if any, effect do you see this having on the transfer portal? Because obviously, recent years we've seen players use the transfer portal as a way to go get that bag. Now, if it's not easily accessible to go get that bag, do you think you'll see less players enter the transfer portal, less, avenues for agents to find the buku money and different programs? It just seems like it'll be tougher to really find that avenue and that stream that a lot of players have been in the past.
Yeah, I'm not sure maybe I'm wrong. I don't know that it'll change the transfer portal that much, because you're still going to have agents, if agents were driving coaches and athletic directors crazy before, like, get ready, because now they're dealing directly with them. Like, the school is actually going to be paying for the rev share. So you're going to have agents saying, what can we get from rev share? And then what are we able to get beyond rev share? Again, whether that's above board or kind of under the table, what are some of the over the cap dollars and things that we have access to? I don't see that as much different than what it was before, because then you're probably also going to have agents shopping around saying, hey, if my guy jumps in the portal, what could he get from you? What kind of package could you put together between rev share and anything over the top of that? So there has been some questions about what schools can do with these rev share agreements. I wrote about this a little bit over the weekend. Like, right now, they're pretty much sticking to 1 year, because again, they're not sure kind of what the long-term impact of this will be. But schools are also writing in clauses that are saying, if you're injured and don't, play a certain amount of snaps or something like that, then you won't get the rev share money that has been promised. Or there's even some that have said, because it's tied to NIL, that it could go up and down based on performance. If you don't play as much or you don't play as well, then technically your name, image, and likeness wouldn't be as valuable in most cases. So maybe we could actually bring it back. This will be another kind of legal issue. Are those things enforceable? But I do think the schools with the rev share specifically might try and take a little bit more control, because they felt like they didn't have a lot of that, in the collective era or when dealing with agents. But I think it's going to be kind of the same thing. Agents and players are always going to be trying, to get the best situation. That doesn't always mean money. That could just, playing time or school they like or whatever. But now NIL and money factors into that. Rev share will factor into that. But I don't know that it'll look much different under the House settlement.
Your thoughts on tanking? this has been brought up. It is a very interesting topic. The rev share is going to run on the school calendar, which is July 1st to June 30th, whatever it is, 31st.
Yeah.
The football season ends in December. And there is this thought that teams might look at their roster and say, you know what, we're going to tank this cycle, and then we'll have more money to spend from December to June, which would be the portal. And then we'll also have next year's money to spend when July 1st rolls around, so we can kind of double dip. Is that realistic? Like, is that really going to happen?
I think this kind of blew my mind. I remember the first time I was talking to a GM about it, and they were pointing out the fact that, yes, the rev share calendar actually basically splits over 2 different football seasons because of the way the football calendar works. And so that requires some thoughtful budgeting, but it also could lead to some basic cap manipulation, like if you want to call it that. And so one way
not
is
a salary cap, though.
Not a salary cap, rev cap manipulation.
Rev cap.
You do have to be smart because, as like a couple people have pointed out, you can't just, all right, in December, we're going to go on the portal. We're going to spend like crazy. We're going to outbid everyone. And if you spend all your rev share money, well, then you can't pay anyone until July 1st hits because you don't have access to any more rev share. Like, that's not necessarily a smart thing to do. But yeah, I do think there's a situation. Again, it's going to be specific. It's not going to be anything that's probably like spoken overtly. But if you feel like you missed on a quarterback, or you've had some roster holes that you haven't filled, and depending on what your coaching situation is or how good your conference is, I don't think it's ridiculous to expect a team to look and say, like, maybe we'd be better off saving some money and trying to load up next year. Like, if we did as best as we could, we wouldn't win the conference, and maybe we'd be lucky to make a bowl game. But if we play this smart and use our money right, then we can load up in the transfer portal and outspend some teams and then have a big roster next year. That's a really tough thing to like do or to sell, but people have done it in professional sports. So,
or
go ahead,
get my windy on, or you're going to fire your coach in December. You're going to have to rebuild your roster in January. So you undercut the coach. You give all your rev share money to basketball or whatever. And then coach gets swept out. You got a bunch of money to spend for the new coach, which would potentially, in theory, make you more attractive on the coaching market if you were to say, hey, we've got $6 million, $7 million laying around for you to hit the ground running here at East Podunk State University.
So this is where like the new kind of Andrew Luck mold of these GMs is really interesting, because for the past couple of years, as the GM title has rose in prominence, it's usually just the director of recruiting, the top recruiting guy, and he's hired by the coach and he works for the coach. And so, yeah, the coach, if he works for the coach, he's going to want the coach to keep his job because he wants to keep his job. Now you're starting to see these schools hire these GMs that are like on the same level, like Jim Nagy at Oklahoma, or, in Andrew Luck's case, he like fired the coach at Stanford. He's actually above the coach, where the GM role is maybe not tied. The roster management might not be specifically tied to the coach. That can then get to what you're saying, which is, okay, if my job isn't tied to the coach and the coach is on the hot seat and I don't like the way things are going, maybe I don't keep it all, but maybe just, this star quarterback in the portal or whoever that this coach wants, actually we're going to hold off a little bit, or we're not going to pay that 4-star recruit from high school that you really like the NIL package you want to, and we're going to save it. Again, it feels kind of gross. I don't like thinking that this is the way it works, but look at the sports landscape, whether it's professional or otherwise. Like, I think you'd be kind of naive to think that some version of this might not happen somewhere in college sports.
You got one more, Brent, or anybody? We got to let this kid go put his kids to bed and do dishes.
Yeah, what did you think when you saw that the teams are going to be paid individually based on users using them on NCAA Football 26? So if you use the Bearcats over and over and over again online, the Bearcats might get, an extra 74 cents, but you at least help them out.
Yeah, this is where like University of Phoenix becomes a power, right? Just one of these like degree content farms that's handing out diplomas. Just get them all playing CFB 26 and get your rating up. It's kind of like the same thing as what there was talk of with these new TV deals, like, in the ACC now, the more people that watch you play kind of impacts part of the money you get from the television contract. Like, I don't like the way it's going, but once money gets involved and once teams need more money to pay athletes $20 million a year, like there's kind of no stopping of the different avenues they might take to find that money.
Yeah. Play.
Thoughts on the Vince Morrow to Louisville?
That was surprising. Maybe I don't live in the message boards worlds as deep as I used to back when I was, doing beat coverage, but man, that was interesting.
Yeah. Very.
Jeff Brom tried to get him at Purdue.
Yeah.
And then tried to get him 2 years ago at Louisville. And I guess the Mark Stoops ship, I got to make sure I enunciate that properly, is taking on water, I think is a good way to put it. Big dog exit stage left.
He loves Kentucky though, like the state of Kentucky. He's not crossing the river.
What? Winton Woods, Trotwood Madison, Springfield, and Youngstown State will all now have heavy representation at the University of Louisville of kids that will be there for 2 years, not play, and enter the transfer portal.
Yeah. And go find somewhere else to hit that rep cap.
Justin's like, all right, I'll see you guys later.
Real quick, Justin.
Go for it.
Talk about the excitement that you have as a relative outsider as you are, senior writer at The Athletic, big time nowadays. How cool it is for the IPF at UC ribbon cutting ceremony on Wednesday.
I'm excited. I want to go see it. I saw it, whatever that was, probably a couple months ago now at this point, where it was not quite ready, but it looks gorgeous. It looks like it's going to be, a big benefit for the program. So I'm kind of excited to see it in its finished product. And, I'm excited to see what you guys, did you decide on a BCJ supply closet, or what did we, what did we sponsor there in the museum? A urinal or something? What do we have?
I wanted like the handicap stall, kind of like
the Brent Young stall.
I'm in. I will do that. I can put my pictures, me with my arm around my best friend Ryan Royer, and we can just be right there plastered in the handicap stall. So
unfortunately, all we could afford was the urinal cake. So that picture is going to be on the urinal cake.
Just Chad Brendel's face.
Work on that aim, fellas. Work on that aim.
Just the logo.
People pay to go pee in there.
Chad, you'd get a lot of numbers if you saw that over in Norwood.
I know. Boy.
Actually, that's a good point.
That's your NIL deal right there.
Dana Gardens should be calling you for BCJ urinal cakes, man.
We got to hit a full circle steal. Get Steele on the phone.
If you don't see me Wednesday, Justin, I'm walking around looking at rooms that didn't get, the branding rights sold so that I can make an offer. It was a basement floor janitor's closet supply room type deal that I was looking at initially. I think you remember, I called you when that first was there, and I was like, should I, as a funny, pay $5,000 and put Bearcat Journal's name on this so that every time, like, I could just go down and do like stand-ups next to the Bearcat Journal supply closet? It would have been a great gag. I didn't do it.
Look, they need new revenue streams. That's what everyone's talking about. They need new revenue streams. This is a way to do it. I think you should, I believe Sherry Murray is going to have like a big, command center desk there at the, if it was like the Sherry Murray's BCJ welcome desk or something like that.
That's probably going to be more costly than I can afford. That's prime real estate.
That's true.
True. Right there where you enter.
I just spent a lot of money on second row for SZA and Kendrick. I don't know that I have supply or like first, ground entry level dollars for ad space.
Cost a lot of urinal cakes to get second row.
A lot of urinal cakes
for Kendrick.
A lot of urinal cakes.
A bunch.
I'll be contacting Dana Gardens tomorrow.
Smart idea.
Look, the BCJ urinal
smart
cakes
business
wouldn't work there. Yeah,
it's smart business for both of you. I don't understand why we wouldn't do this deal.
Like this right here.
Yes, that, and also we can sell some dartboards with just
Centos Center.
your face.
There'd be new dart leagues that start up in Norwood.
That'd be nice. It'll work out.
Justin, get out of here.
Love you guys.
Thank you, sir. You're the best.
Thank you, Justin.
See you Wednesday.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Gave the brass tacks, the nuts and bolts of the operation. You know what? So Justin was a two-sport athlete at Ohio. He played football and basketball. Started in both, but he was before the cutoff for the NIL clawback, if you will, that's taking place. Ryan Royer, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Well, first off, how are we, sir? Welcome in, the boys here, the legend. But your thoughts on kind of all this settlement stuff going through, and then are you in the mix to yet again pipe into this this little clawback payback? The what was it, Aaron? 2.8, 2.6, whatever it was.
2.8, I believe.
$1 billion. Ryan, thoughts on it all? The whole landscape of college athletics and the P5 level is definitely changing.
Yeah, I like the direction of just getting it a little bit more under control, having a little bit more regulation, because I think we've talked about it on the show numerous times where, the NCAA kind of had their tail in between its legs when things really started to pop off with, how much, the growth in social media and how much players were really able to kind of boost the name of their university and boost the NCAA brand. Starting all the way back with Reggie Bush. And I think there's a lot of things where the NCAA kind of felt like they were behind the eight ball. And I think they just kind of try to get back to even and just let everything fly. And then, you're going to have vultures circling you in that situation. So like we said, there's been a lot of different ways that the system's been gamed and taken advantage of. And I think this is a step in the right direction to make sure that the super rich schools kind of can get reeled in and try to level the playing field a little bit more. But I think that's always going to be an uphill battle. And like Chad, I know you're given those hypothetical scenarios that this new settlement still won't even be able to kind of rope in for sure. So it's always going to be an evolving process. But as a whole, I think it's good that the players have been able to get, what they deserve. It's just being able to make sure that you can keep the PE people, the money vultures in check from really adding a lot of discrepancy when you go down, especially versus the Power Four, and then all the other conferences and programs. But yeah, I'm able to get a nice little spoonful from this. Nothing like if we were in the Big 12. So we get judged on what conference we were in when we played. But I'll take any bit of money I can get, being that I didn't have that big of a presence, you could say, nationally, where I lost out on a ton of money opportunities. So I'll take the little crumbs that I'm getting, and I'm happy with it. Just like I was mentioning before, kind of making sure things keep in check, have a little bit of regulation around this, just so that we don't really lose sight of what makes college sports special, and don't lose sight of like the development of men and women in academics, and their character, and the importance of being on a team and getting through adversity. That can get lost in the wayside here with stuff, but there's a middle ground somewhere, and I think we're moving closer towards it. So I'm overall pleased with the settlement.
Okay.
So you're not you don't need paid for this anymore, right? You're now independently wealthy, and you'll just be doing this show out of like the kindness of your giving back to the Bearcats.
Oh, Chad, I would be doing it for free anyway, so don't you worry about that. But let's put it like this: the amount I'm getting is probably equal to the mailbag edition when when Brent likes to interrupt you, Chad, and add 3 questions on top of it. That's probably the amount of money I'm pulling in here. So one or 2 mailbag session rates is the settlement payout I'm getting.
So were you in the group chat with all the other teammates, like you and Brent? We're gonna be rich. We're gonna be rich right before the Miami game.
Yeah.
And then everything.
Oh, that is funny you bring that up because we're all you see the top number, the billions of dollars that's being floated around, and
Right.
you start doing the math in your head. You're like, well, there's only so many teams and only so many players, and you divide that by 1 billion, and the next thing you know, you see the asterisk. It's like pending on the level of conference while playing, and then the gears start churning again. You're like, I wonder who's really going to get the biggest of chunks here. And then you see that final pay line. You're like, all right, well, I'm not getting nearly as much as what I thought. I was thinking, man, I could go buy a house, get a down payment. I'll be
right.
Thank you, NCAA. We were significant. I was significantly off.
Question.
The American Athletic Conference strikes again.
Right. We just simply can't run away fast enough. Ryan, so maybe you don't know the answer to this, and that's fine. But I guess kind of peeling the curtain back a little bit. Like, does Sauce Gardner get the same amount that you do, or do they go all the way back to like breaking down statistics, breaking down, maybe plays and participation percentage, things like that?
No. So the way they broke it down, it's like the conference has its own kind of multiplier, and then they have some sort of internal formula based on they have like an academic portion, they have an NIL portion where they somehow calculate how much you could have made in NIL, and I think that kind of plays into your question of like how much like image and likeness did you lose out on, like how much would you how promotable were you, how much money could you have made, and that kind of goes back to how prominent of a player you were. But it even still, it's like those guys like a Desmond Ritter, a Sauce, a Wiley, or like a Ivan Pace, those kind of guys who are like nationally known for their ability, like the amount of money they're making comparative to like a guy like me or like a low impact starter is still like significantly less when you're looking at like the Power 5 schools. So being that we were in the American that's the largest contributor, is just the overall conference impact on your total payout. So, but I mean, guys like them, they're still going to bring in like tens of thousands of dollars just because of like an NIL like estimation. But we're just like baseline for the Power 5 schools back in that 17 through 21. Those guys are well above 50,000. Like,
yeah,
I'm still in a group chat with a lot of the guys that I came in with. So there's probably like 25 of us in there. And like, it's like, oh, like so-and-so, like my buddy that was playing on like Ohio State or Oregon or stuff like that. They're like, yeah, they're making like 60, 70, 80 just off rip. So it's,
oh gosh,
but that sucks. Cause if you look at us, like the level of play we were at, like the teams we were beating, like they're making like 8 times more when we were on our way to the college football playoff and almost beating Georgia the year before. Like if you want to like do a direct comparison on ability and like level of competitiveness, like we were right up there with them. But it's just that the bullshit American versus SEC, American versus Big Ten. So that would be nice if they said, oh, you guys went to the playoff. Like,
right,
let's give you guys a 20 times multiplier. That would be nice because you guys really weren't American level football.
Yeah, you weren't the same as Temple, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chad, Aaron, kind of my last question on the topic. Then we'll move on to riffing. So this whole thing, I guess, was in some sort of a way to put up the guardrails on the entire, just how everything was going wild money wise and NIL and recruiting and things of that sort. But do you think that in a way this has also ushered back in the shadiness of what college sports used to be before the whole NIL, before all of that thing happened? Because it didn't want to come out and straight up just be like, hey, Justin, is this going to lead to just bad things happening again? Or do you think that's kind of what's rolling through? Yeah.
Yeah, I think he alluded to that. I mean, I'd be remiss to think that it's not going on somewhere somehow right now. I mean, I don't know, I think there's always going to be a certain level.
It didn't have to go on up until yesterday, Friday.
Right.
Like,
yes and no. I mean, yes, but
there's no yes and no. You just pay them.
If you would let me make my point, you could just pay them and keep it all above board, yes, but then you have to report it all for income tax purposes. If you're just, again, like Justin's point, wiring people money, or if you're just handing them cash or something of that nature, you're not having to pay any type of income tax. So you're alleviating the income tax if you were still doing something shady. So I still think that there was probably a certain level. I don't think it was anywhere near what it had been previously, but I still think there was a certain level of probably some shadiness going on. That said, I think that you're setting yourself up for far more of that here. But like we talked about last night when we did the show, I think if you are whoever's in charge at this point, I don't even know anymore, but whoever's in charge, just set up a death penalty for these teams and literally just knock out the entire organization and not just blame it on the head coach who's in charge, but take out the entire football team for the following year. Don't allow them to have self-sanctions. Don't allow them to set it up for when it's convenient or anything like that. Like, I don't know. I just think that this is all part of the issue of not having any type of real hierarchy with the way the NCAA is set up, because you have all of these different bodies. Nobody's in charge of all the different bodies. They all kind of do their own thing, but maybe might give you a penalty. Why don't you go ahead and penalize yourself, and we'll just put our approval stamp on it. I don't know. It's a mess.
I guess. I mean, somebody's always going to try to get an advantage. Somebody's always going to try to cheat the system. I don't think there's anything why would the collective or a business care if the player is responsible for income taxes? Like, I don't think that's something that's worth. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze in an era where you could just give your money to the collective gives it to the player, and the player has to deal with it from there. You're opening yourself up to jail time, like real jail time, if you're skirting that system that is just allowing you to say, here, this money is earmarked for this specific thing. I don't think it's happening now, but I'm not going to rule it out, because these people don't care. They want any advantage that they can get. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, but that doesn't mean people aren't doing it. So I guess, I mean, everybody is blowing this whistle. I do think there are a large number of the member institutions that want this to be on a level playing field, because they're tired of dealing with it not being on a level playing field. The interesting part, I think, is going to be how much snitching is going to go on, because there's rumors for everything. Like, you're dealing with money, man. People are going to talk, and all it takes is one handler to say, hey, they're offering, they say they grease the wheels a little bit. You want to match them? And then next thing you know, that school is saying, hey, we've got evidence, we've got proof that they're doing things under the table. Like, will the member institutions be willing to police themselves? I think is going to be an interesting, part of this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do think there are enough involved that want this thing to be as level as possible.
Yeah.
But there are also, Brent, the people at the top that are going to say, why do I, Alabama, hypothetically speaking, have to be level with Boston College?
Right.
I'm not in the same stratosphere as Boston College. Things should not be even for us and Boston College.
Yeah.
So, that part is where the cracks begin, right?
Right. Yeah.
Ohio State's just going to be okay with Cincinnati being on a level playing field?
They better be.
Really?
No. Yeah.
Well,
No.
it's hard. Well, what happened when you're comparing it back, it was like just based on recruiting, and let's say that there wasn't like under the table deals of money or like cars and like shit like that, where programs would like entice guys to come there with their resources. But like I think there is something to be said that back in the day where, if you had a coach that you could go recruit and get his guys to believe in them, like I feel like when we were at Cincinnati, where we were like poaching teams from like Kentucky, poaching players from Kentucky, Indiana, Purdue, like that Midwest area where, they're technically a bigger program than we were when we were in the American, but we had guys like Chad Bowden, Marcus Freeman, Pat Lambert, Max, that really kind of hit recruiting really hard. They were really good at it. And we were able to kind of like not be limited by our lack of size as a school, lack of like money flow ability. So that's where I think that like this could, because if you look at like a 17, 18-year-old kid and you're like, hey, I'm going to give you $50,000 more to come to my school. Like they're not like that. Most kids that age, especially if kids that are coming from like low income upbringings, like they're going to think about like, how do I take care of my family? How do I take care of myself financially? And that kind of eliminates that, level playing field of, hey, like I'm building a program here. I'm taking the importance of recruiting and I'm using that as my edge. Whereas now like that kind of just gets thrown out the window and it's just kind of like who can write the biggest check. And so I see what you're saying, Chad. Like if you've built up an athletic program where, hey, we've generated all this money because of the brand we've created. It doesn't feel fair to just be like, yeah, you guys are now the same as Tulsa. Like, obviously that doesn't sound right, but there has to be some sort of fairy tale middle ground that I know doesn't exist, but just trying to keep it like what made college football and college basketball special is that you were able to recruit kids based on the brand that you wanted to create. And you were able to build a program based on values, and the kids could sit through their 4 to 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years, or in basketball 1 to 2. And you could really build a program up like that, build it on the right things and develop men, develop women. And it just seems like that is always going to be lost, and just trying to find a way to get closer to that, I think is the right direction to go, just for the players, for the universities, just for overall development. But it does feel like wishful thinking.
It'd be interesting to see if because similar sense, Chad, an example that I'm bringing up as well, Ryan, is like when you, and I kind of asked Justin it too, and then we'll move on after this, but it's like, say, take football out of it. Say Alabama used 15 million in football, and then they've got a handful million left for basketball, and then the rest for the other sports. I heard this on another pod. And then say that Nate Oates is going 1v1 against Rick Pitino for a high level recruit or transfer. And is Oates really going to back down because he can't pay, $3 million to this recruit when Pitino has all of his cap pretty much to pay that player? The whole thing is going to be weird. But I agree with what you're saying.
I don't think it's not realistic because they don't make enough money to do that.
Right.
But they would have to literally be spending their entire revenue that they're bringing in to spend on players and not be ultimately making any money. That it's just not like it's great in theory. It sounds great on paper that they can do that, but they don't have 30, 40, 50 million dollar TV contracts. And think of it this way, Brent, the schools that do have 30, 40, 50 million dollar TV contracts don't have enough to pay the 20 million. So you're telling me a school that's got an $8 million revenue stream,
right,
is going to spend 20?
Yeah.
That they're not bringing in. They're going to, even if it's 10, where's the rest of the money? Like how is your, how do you have a balanced athletic department? How do you have an athletic department if all of the money coming in goes out to paying players? It sounds great as like a podcast talking point, which is where it has gained steam. But
right.
Practically, it doesn't make any sense. Like there's not just that extra. Oh, we got an extra $6 million laying around.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be the fundraising aspect of it? Like instead of
the way this is set up, you're not supposed to be allowed to like fundraise for rev share.
Okay.
You're not supposed to be allowed to fundraise for rev share.
Yet again, just let me know when it's all done and we're just, all the loose ends are tied and
it won't be done until about a decade from now, and then it'll be time to start the cycle all over again.
Right.
Good luck.
Right.
Yeah, because this is only a 10-year deal. Like that's the part that I haven't seen anybody really talk about. This is only a 10-year settlement. And 20, all the pending, it goes away.
All the pending lawsuits that are coming because of Title IX and everything else. I mean, this is all going to get messier before it gets cleaner.
And if Congress steps in and tries to limit via a bill the athlete's ability to make money, that thing's going to court faster than you can blink. So
fun stuff.
It's the beginning. We're nowhere close to the end. This is nowhere close. Justin's probably right that it's more of a waypoint, that this journey started already, and now we're maybe at the first or second checkpoint along the way. But until we've said it a million times, I think Aaron and I will continue to be right on this until they're employees. And until there's collective bargaining, all of this is just rearranging deck chairs. I'm not ready to call it the Titanic, but none of this matters until they're employees and until there is collective bargaining where the athletes have a voice and have a say in a negotiation. Until then, it's just the NCAA trying to be the NCAA and bully their way into superiority.
Iceberg is not in sight yet. I hear you. No,
not yet.
All right, well, let's timestamp it yet again. That's fine. My favorite topic these days. Just I love sports, and then all this stuff comes involved with it. So we'll see what happens.
We're going to change it up a little bit today on the timestamp, Brent. Quick Paper wants to put in a plug for their upcoming Canes, Ohio 10U tryouts for the 2026 season. Okay. They work out at a private indoor facility playing in Southwest Ohio. Tryouts will be held July 8th at Moeller's new baseball complex. Cool. Please reach out to Nick if you're looking for a place for your son to play 10U baseball this for the 2026 season. 513-470-2029. That'll be Nick, and he will get you taken care of.
Wow.
He said, can we mix it up? I said, you have been here from the start, brother. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. A buddy of mine, his son, my buddy played in the NFL. He was a good player in the NFL. His son hit 3 dingers in the championship game this past weekend for his team to win. How about that? Just unbelievable.
Big time.
Just unbelievable.
Big time.
No free shout outs, but love you, Jack Doyle. No free shout outs. But Ryan Royer, we're gonna get ready to fire it down to you, man. You know what? We're gonna riff. It's gonna be so much fun, man. Roland Garros, remember how fun that was texting me during that? 5 hours, 5.5 hours of fun. God, you're a legend. Ryan, are you ready to riff?
I am ready to riff.
Let's go.
All right, gentlemen. So first question. I know we were just beating the drum over and over on NIL rev share. Where do you believe? No, I'm sorry. As the GM of the Bearcats, how rank your? I'm sorry. I keep messing it up. You're the GM of the Bearcats. What would be your first step in handling a football versus basketball roster decision? What would you prioritize? Would you prioritize one or the other?
So this would be an athletic director. It wouldn't be a GM.
Yeah.
Because if you're the GM for football, you're going to put all the money into football.
Yes, that's what I meant to say. Thanks, Shane.
It's interesting. It's an interesting discussion because a little bit more money in basketball is going to go a longer way than a little bit more money in football. But you don't want to be caught in football being the team that's spending $3 million, $2 million, $3 million less than everybody else you're competing with. I think it's outside of Kansas and Arizona. Like, it's a football conference. Football drives the bus in the state of Texas and in the state of Florida and West Virginia and Oklahoma State. And these are all football first places. So they are going to be spending as much as they can get away with on football. That means if you take $2 million away from football and you put it towards basketball, you are increasing the odds that the teams that you are trying to compete with for championships every year, and think about it this way, over 4 years, that's $8 million that they've spent on football over your program. And that inherently puts your program at a disadvantage. So you're almost in a situation where you have to keep up with the Joneses in football, and then make the most of what you can with basketball. Although an argument could be made, spending a little bit more in basketball is going to give you more return on investment because you can be good and you can be better in basketball with one or two additions. If you have an extra extra 1.5 million that the other schools in the conference aren't really spending on basketball, you can use that, if not on a star player, you can use that on a top 300 type guy that makes your team more complete than the others that you are competing with. Or you can use it on 2 starters at $750,000 a piece, let's just say. So that's the tough decision that John Cunningham and this athletic department is going to have to make when allocating this money is, do we try to get a little bit of an advantage in basketball, or you're not going to get an advantage in football? UC's not going to spend at the top of the league in football. Basketball means too much here to undercut basketball by $1 million or $2 million. That's not going to happen. So it's keep up as best you can in football, try to get a little bit of an advantage in basketball. And with football being so important to the overall revenue, I find it hard to believe you're willingly going to put yourself at a disadvantage to compete in the sport that does the most to drive revenue as a whole. And there are people that'll tell you, go all in on basketball. Spend $8 million on basketball and $10 million on football, and everybody else gets the rest. It's a tough position to put yourself in.
I got an interesting question to kind of back off that, Ryan. So Nippert is not a massive, stadium, obviously. And so the ticket sale number won't be as high as, the Big House selling out and those SEC schools selling out and things like that. Does that have a different effect on rev coming in, or is it more so based off TV numbers and things of that sort?
So it's all part of the pie. Like it all fits into the same ticket sales, merch, TV revenue. What they did is they took everybody in the Power Four, they took all of their revenue numbers and then averaged it out at 20%, which got you the 18, 19, whatever percent. That got you the 20.5 million. And then as revenue grows over the next 10 years, they think it'll get as high as 30 by 2035. Schools will be able to pay out $30 million. But supposedly all of that is factored in to revenue, and it's not just TV contracts.
So,
but for example, we'll sell 40,000 seats a game. Michigan sells 110, 120. So they're going to be making 2 to 3 times more on ticket prices. And if you want to look in the grand scheme of things, though, if you're looking at what's the TV rev share that we got, how many million was it, Chad?
They're saying the Big 12 should be about 38, I think, this year.
And what's the Big 10?
50 plus.
Okay. So
but
40.
Each school can only spend 20.5 million on paying the athletes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the TV deal is obviously exponentially more impactful because 50,000 more seats at the Big House versus Nippert. I mean, it only comes out to be what, 50,000 times 100 times 150 times 75, however much you want to look at, like your average ticket price, then versus however many millions of dollars is the difference between Big 12 media deal versus Big 10 media deal. Or if you just want to directly compare the 20.5, I mean, they're going to get little chunks, but it's nowhere near the size of the impact, the millions that come with TV.
Yeah.
I mean, over time, over like 15, 20 years, it would start to approach, but.
Aaron, who are you giving your
kind of my answer to your question, Ryan? I think it would kind of depend on where you saw on a year-to-year basis, where you saw the future of the team going. If you were able to kind of see as far as who's coming back, and I think there's too many intangibles to really give you a true answer, because I think if you have a quarterback coming back that you believe in, I think then maybe you are allocating some, maybe hopefully less money to some situations as opposed to, or if you have not a starting 5 but a decent 5 coming in for your basketball team, maybe you don't have to allocate as much there because they're coming back, as opposed to going out and having to get some bigger pieces. So I think there's just a lot of intangibles that make that a difficult question, and truthfully, I think that you'd have a different answer every single year based upon whatever the ongoing situation was between your programs. So it's tough.
Yeah,
I guess we could just segue that right into my second question. Is you have another scenario of your, I guess, Mr. Cunningham here, and you need to retain either Brendan Sorsby through NIL or retain Jizzle and add Chom. What do you think is more? Where would you put more of your money into, and which decision would you go with? You either let Sorsby walk, you let Jizzle walk, and you don't get Chom.
Well, I answered last first. I answered last on the last question, so I'll answer first on this one. I think right now, I guess the glimpses that we saw of Brendan Sorsby, especially during the first half of last season, were extremely exciting. And if we knew that a second year in the system, as opposed to having to restart at that position in particular with a new quarterback in this system and trying to hope for the best, that makes me a little nervous. That said, I think that the fall off from I guess it would depend on what the fall off was from Jizzle and Chom to whatever the next level of guys that you were going to be bringing in to be at those positions were going to be, because there's still a lot of, does Jizzle take that next step forward next year? We don't know. He took a small step forward this year. I don't know that it was the leap that we were all hoping to see, but I think that there was a small step forward. The same thing could be said for Chom. He's listed as an NBA prospect, and does he make that same step forward? So there's plenty of question marks around both guys. If I had to give you an answer, I think I'd probably go with football, just simply with it being the money driver and all of those things, and because I think that getting some guys in here to replace the two, Jizzle and Chom, as opposed to Sorsby, it's probably a little more difficult.
I think you also have to say, though, Aaron, Sorsby was who he was over those final 5 weeks, and he was a big reason the team didn't get to a bowl game. Much the same that we rode a roller coaster with Jizzle. Like,
yeah,
Jizzle
I
had.
still think he had both. He had bad thumbs. He's not going to admit it, but I still think he had bad thumbs.
Okay. I would. Man.
Also think about the guards we brought in, though. Kirk Reese.
But also think about if you didn't
Harris.
have Sorsby, you would go out and you would have gotten a quarterback in the portal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll take Jizzle and Chom. It's not a shot at Sorsby, but I'll take a point guard and a center, which I think are the two like driving forces in college basketball that you need to have to be really good. Give me those two, and I'll roll the dice at quarterback, I guess.
I really think Sorsby is going to have a lot better year, a consistent year. I really do. Yeah. I think his arm talent, and I think that the additions that we brought in the receiver room on offense, I think is going to have a lot bigger impact than what we think. Because I think that, you know, those the conversations that we had with Scott Satterfield, and then I think the conversations we also had at the back end of the year of just like, we were so easily defended because we had no weapons. We didn't have guys that could get open, and it just made the defense, it made us so predictable, and it just said, all right, well, they're going to either try to run it with Sorsby or they're going to try to run it with Kiner, and let's just hold them in check on that, and our offense is essentially shut down. So I really think Sorsby carries a lot more weight than I think he
basketball
showed.
Had the same problem. Like they didn't have anybody on the inside they could throw the ball to. Dan and Seamus completely folded as Big 12 high-level players. So then Jizzle didn't have anybody alongside of him, and had to kind of take over and try to do things himself because he was the only guy that could consistently create his own shot. Like, I think Sorsby and Jizzle had very similar kind of issues last year where they were forced to do too much, and that was kind of their downfall because they're very good, but they're not great. Like, I think they're both in a very similar boat of when they were on, they were efficient, and they were the reason that Cincinnati won, but they weren't at the level where they were going to be on more often than they were off. And I think when you add in Chom, who can shoot the three, can block shots, can rebound, runs the floor, can be kind of an anchor on your defense, and somebody you play through as a center on offense, I think that tilts the scales in favor of basketball. that is not to take away from Sorsby at all, because I do think he's got a chance to be very good.
Yeah.
But much like Jizzle, got to see it.
Mhm.
Throwing in Chom tilts the scales to basketball,
Right.
I guess is what I'm saying.
Got your next one, Roy?
You don't want to give your slice?
I'm gonna
He
always do
doesn't
my
want
little.
to.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna do my bias. Basketball's been my first love here, and like Chad's saying, I mean, you only have now 15 scholarships, but now you have 2 monster pieces. One that's, as Aaron mentioned, a potential NBA draft pick. Sorsby, I think, is going to be fantastic. I think, you know, the upgrade at receivers and Joe Royer in year 2 connected with them is going to only make things greater for Sorsby, but I'm always going to be a little biased towards the basketball side of things.
Fair. All right, we're sticking with NIL. One last question. It's all I could think about because that's all my Bearcat brain was fed, being the downtime we're in right now when I got that email. All right, so you're the director of NIL outreach at the university. Give me one like cash cow, local Cincinnati business that you'd go after to try to maximize money, and give me one fun one, like one fun kind of local business that doesn't really have to be money involved, a fun little scenario of how you'd bring them into the fold in the Cincy's NIL.
Chat space on a urinal cake doesn't count, right?
That could be the fun one.
Yeah.
You've already got one at home, don't you, Aaron?
I mean,
yeah, he created it himself.
It's been a work in progress.
You were awful quick with that suggestion.
Dad's got to pay for these kids to eat.
He's got a patent on the stencil.
He's got an Etsy storefront selling Brendel urinal cakes.
Mm-hmm. Centos filled. TQL, because I'm in the business of logistics, and I think I'd be able to speak their language pretty easily to not only, obviously they're a massive part right now, but take it to a complete further level. And then Murphy's Pub, all the unused hot dogs from the night before, we're going to somehow be able to use those in a productive way, maybe like a lemonade stand, maybe a hot dog stand right outside of Murphy's, all the leftover hot dogs from the night before, people that didn't eat them, sell them for about $5 a piece. Everyone's like, this goes straight to the NIL, the rev share, the rev cap, and there we go. Murphy's Pub. No free shout outs.
You are unbelievable.
What you got, Aaron?
I don't know. I feel like even with Rheingeist, kind of in the same vein as TQL being a partner already, I think Rheingeist could probably be doing more with the players, as far as putting them on cans. Maybe like every home game you have a different player on a can or something of that nature. You've got several different sports. You've got an entire year of sports where you're doing different players on different cans throughout the year. Again, just to boost that. It's already part of the NIL anyway, as is. So I think that would be just an easy transition that you could kind of do. As far as a fun one, man, it's really hard to get past those Chad faces, but I don't know. I mean, when you see things like Grippo's doing deals with the Buckeyes, as opposed to the Bearcats when they're right here in their backyard, I'd just like to see some of these local companies like that, like a Grippo's, that are doing things with Cincinnati, as opposed, or even maybe Graders to a better degree, doing things with Cincinnati guys, as opposed to going up the road to Columbus.
I'd like to see them do more with Kroger. Like, that is a giant brand. They've worked more with Kentucky. I mean, it's not that they haven't worked with UC. I think people are wrong on that front. They have done a lot to spend money and sponsor UC, but I'd like to see more. I'd like to see a more prominent fixture because they are a Cincinnati-based company that is a Fortune 500 company. And I mean, there's a lot of places around the United States you go and there's a Kroger, or the grocery store you're shopping in is owned by Kroger. So, you know, I'd like to see something along those lines. The fun one, like, how are we not doing more with like Geta? Like, you know, everybody talks about like Skyline and Graders and La Rosa's, all for good reason.
Right on.
Bearcat,
right on
Geta. Like, but why is there not more of a Geta? Like, it's I got you, Marcus. We're right on the same page, bro. We're right on the same page.
Because Mets isn't there anymore. We didn't maximize it when he was in town.
Probably right. You got to go get like, well, that's what it could be. There could be one German every year on the football roster.
I like this.
With his NIL paid for by Glears Geta.
Yep. Maybe get like Dirk Nowitzki's son, if he's even exists. That could be good. On the basketball side of things.
What's Dirk Nowitzki have to do with Cincinnati?
He's German, right?
Yes, he is German. Good job.
Yeah, he is German. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, there we go. That was my path there.
I'll go Geta. Yeah, Geta.
Roy, what are yours? Fun and serious.
I like Chad's call out on Kroger. I think we already have something with TQL, but between TQL and Kroger, that's probably the largest local cash cows that you could really get a lot of money driven through.
P&G.
Yeah, or GE where I work.
P&G is legitimately a global brand. Like, they are headquartered in Cincinnati, but they don't do anything really like as a Cincinnati company, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because their products are so global.
They're too big.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately too big.
Yeah. But like Kroger, I mean, you could just go steal Centos from Xavier. I'm sure that would be fun.
That would be
probably
fun.
easy to do. Fifth Third, I mean, there's Fifth
one.
Third Arena. I don't know what else with a bank. What more could you do with a bank?
Just straight print money.
Banks don't print money, Brent.
I agree, but we're gonna make them do it for our NIL. Royer,
my fun one would have to be Skyline. Like all Bearcats athletes, they get one free meal a month.
Ooh, I was thinking a day.
You can get one entree, one side, and a drink.
Okay. And you can bring in your own Mountain Dew.
Yeah. Or special release, all Bearcat athletes get limited Mountain Dew machine availability.
I'm not gonna lie, my Skyline consumption has dipped considerably
after that
since they got rid of Mountain Dew. I'm just one man. But I want Skyline less now that I can't get a Dew to go with it. It just was one of those things.
You know, I can imagine that Coach Bishel is just sitting here, big smile on his face, hearing us introduce Mountain Dew yet again to the podcast. Shouts to him for really incorporating his Diet Dew. That was impressive.
I mean, he went hard for the sponsorship, boy.
Oh yeah, he went hard.
Hard.
I'm sure he still is going hard.
Yeah, but I mean, like, he had a national platform.
Mm-hmm.
He put the chips on the table.
He did. Yeah, absolutely did.
Drink of champions. Drink of champions.
Royer, that was a pretty fun one.
This is my table. I will splash the pot however I wish.
Someone give this man his money. Royer, that was a fun one that you came up with your own, but do you want to do that last one that we were texting about before?
I would love to. Do you want to segue us into it?
Yes, I kind of alluded to it before. Remember when we were texting during Roland Garros final? Remember that?
I do.
Yeah, you said bottomless mimosas ? I said FaceTime. You said yeah, and so that was when it started, and we said we were only going to do a handful, like 5, and then all of a sudden, we were like, oh, it looks like Alcaraz, he's done, triple championship point, and then all of a sudden he comes back, and it's just like crazy, and we just kept on saying, okay, we got to keep going, FaceTime again, another FaceTime call number 3, and then you said, gosh, this is kind of like an overtime when we go to the final set. And when it hits the playoff and you got to get to 10, it kind of feels like like an overtime. And I said, yeah. I said, is this kind of like the most fun overtime that format that you can think of in sports? And you're like, no, I don't think so. Mine is, and I said, save it for the BBP on Monday. Your favorite overtime format in sports? Is it a playoff in golf tournament? Is it the way tennis does it? Maybe football, maybe college football? Is it college basketball? Is it the Elam ending and the TBT? You know what? I said save it for the BBP. Favorite overtime format in sports?
I'm going 3-on-3 hockey. It's 5 minutes of just craziness. It would be better if they did it in the playoffs, just the level of, but it just would be kind of fluky. That's why they don't do it. Kind of like how baseball gets rid of the runner on in extra innings in the playoffs too. But I just love the 3-on-3. It's nonstop go.
How about those first 2 games in the Stanley Cup final? Sheesh.
Yeah, they were epic.
I thought you were going to say the PKs for hockey. I'm surprised you went 3-on-3.
Oh, the shootouts? I don't know. The 3-on-3 is just even more exciting just because it's like back and forth, end to end. Whereas like the shootouts, it's kind of, there's some downtime in between shooters, and then I don't know. But it is, the shootout is really fun. That was a good call there.
Which is where I was going to go. I don't much care to watch soccer like an entire game, but penalty kicks at the end are insane, absolutely insane. And you only have 5 of them each side and all of that, but I think that it's probably more intense than sometimes you get a lopsided overtime in basketball. College football overtime is a mess. It's the worst of all of them. Or football, like NFL football, you run into a mess sometimes, but I think penalty kicks in soccer are absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Chad, you got one?
How about sudden death hole by hole to decide the Masters?
That was mine, man. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, they alternate between the 18th and the 10th hole.
Yeah.
It's you watch 4 straight days of the Masters, you love it, and then Chad, take it away from there.
And just go to 18, play it again. If you get a winner, great. If not, you walk over to 10. You play 10, you get a winner, great. If not, you walk back to 18. Like just everything on the line. The crowd, you don't realize the crowd is spread out the entire day.
Mm-hmm.
If you get to that, everybody just converges in that area between 18 and 10.
Yeah.
And it's just bananas. Ryan took hockey. My answer would typically be any overtime in the Stanley Cup, especially the finals. I like hockey. I think hockey translates terribly to TV. But watching overtime when it can change like that, and bang, the puck changes ends, one slap shot, and it looked like the other team was dominating, and now they're, dying on the ice.
Yep.
But since Ryan took hockey, I'll take the Masters.
Here we go. That's That's a good quick flip. So that I don't copy you with the Masters. And yeah, I mean, Royer's pick of Stanley Cup game 1, that was some of the most exciting like finishing, and then you just see the crowd erupt in Edmonton, and it was just elite aura and electricity factory going on there. But I'll go baseball, especially like in like World Series type setting, like playoff type setting where you go to extra innings and it's bottom of the 11th, and it's just like you can get a walk-off homer, just send them home. That kind of that excitement of every single pitch meaning so much. I'll throw that one out there because like Aaron said, basketball could get lopsided pretty quickly. I think overtimes in like college basketball is fun, but you can get like an 8-1 overtime scenario and all of a sudden
Can get bogged down with free throws.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'll go extra innings in a high level playoff game in the MLB.
You know what I don't like?
What's that?
I don't like the NFL has now gone to 10-minute overtime.
Yeah.
Because it feels like one drive and you're already like the clock is running out.
Right.
Like I hate it. I don't like that feeling of like, I don't know. It's hard to explain what exactly I'm looking for, but like it feels unnecessary that all of a sudden the quarter overtime just started and there's like 4 minutes on the clock.
Yeah.
Like what just happened? We didn't hardly do anything. They've moved the ball 35 yards and there's 4 minutes left in overtime. Now I know in the playoffs it doesn't matter. You just keep playing. But like in the regular season, it just why didn't they leave it at 15? One quarter. See what happens. Instead, like I don't like the 10. I don't like the 10.
Agree. Least favorite college football.
Worst.
2-point conversions, baby.
2-point conversions. Which game was that? Like Penn State versus was it like Minnesota or someone where help me out here, Royer. It was just like horrible. Neither team could get any 2-point conversions back and forth. It was just like, golly, this is just a pain to watch.
I can't. Or was it the? I can't remember. It was an SEC game. Crazy. It was like 8 overtimes last year.
Illinois, Penn State.
Illinois, Penn State was the one I was thinking of, where it's just like you're supposed to have a 2-point conversion in your back pocket. Oh, Marcus brings up a good one. That Georgia Tech game, that was an awesome
That's what
game.
I was thinking of. That's what it was.
And then the overtimes just kind of ruined it, I think. Yeah, it's a good
Illinois,
point.
Penn State was 9 overtimes.
Yeah.
Longest ever.
2-point conversions. All right. Well, it's time, Snap. Let's do it.
Quick Paper Supply. They want to do your paper products, but they also want to give you a chance to get your 10-year-old signed up for Canes, Ohio 10U tryouts for the 2026 season. It's at a private indoor facility. They play in the SWOL. The tryouts will be held July 8th at Moeller's new baseball complex. Please reach out to Nick to get signed up. 513-470-2029. There you go.
Boom, baby.
Aaron.
Real quick.
Quickest mailbag ever.
Yeah, it's very small. So real quick, we got a few commitments over since the last episode. Xavier Anderson, tight end out of Spring Mills, and a couple O linemen today. Nathan Zappitelli is one, Ohio native. There we go. That's a big one. And then Austin Hone, offensive lineman as well. After the first official visit this past weekend, good commitments. Chad, I imagine it was funny that Dave kind of brought up the whole scenario when you were at the Fish concert a few years ago, and it was like commitment, all on that Saturday.
Well, that was the worst. They were all doing it while they were still on campus.
Right.
We
exactly.
couldn't talk to them because you're not allowed to talk to recruits while they're on campus visiting. Yeah. It was terrible. It was a nightmare.
But here we are. 3 more commitments to the 2026 class. Couple couple O linemen, one Ohio native, and then a tight end that Aaron, if you remember, we saw him on a, I believe it was unofficial visit during the season at Nippert, and he looked like, great size for a tight end. So intriguing there as well.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also, things are.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chad. Nope.
I was just going to say I like adding a couple interior offensive linemen. They've been heavily focused on tackle. I like getting a couple nasty guards that are they're vital in this outside zone scheme. So I like going and finding a couple guys that have good size, good feet, can move inside out and really get out in space. So, and they got a little nasty to them. The one kid, Keegan asked him what made him decide to shut things down, and he said, I thought about it, looked at all the schools that I was considering. I said, fuck them. I want to be a Bearcat.
I like that. That's what I think about before I eat dessert, and I say, you know what, I've been thinking about trying to get on a diet, and I say, fuck them. Eat that dessert.
So if you're looking for a favorite Bearcat ever, Austin Hone from Cookeville, Tennessee, who when faced with the decision on continue his recruitment or commit to the Cincinnati Bearcats, he thought about his experiences with all the other schools, said, fuck them. I want to be a Bearcat.
Sorry, Dan. And let's go ahead and mailbag it out.
Yeah.
Shouts to him.
What I was trying to add earlier is the fact that baseball is moving along. We should have some more on baseball here in the next. They ran into the snafu of the house settlement, where before the house settlement on Friday, you could do NIL one way, and now you are having to do NIL a different way because of the house settlement. So anything that was settled regarding NIL before Friday, that's done in the books, whatever. Now you have to switch up the game, but there are some things moving, some things that I'm not allowed to talk about. We'll see where it goes, and once we have the rosters more set, we'll probably do a deeper dive in that. As this is where we are in the off season now.
They're looking at around seven or eight transfer portal additions in total. They've added one officially. I think things will happen pretty quick on most of the rest.
Yeah. But now that baseball is the thing worth talking about, we'll be talking about it.
Pitching. Expect a lot of pitching.
Let's start out in the mailbag, in the football portion of the mailbag. It's deep. One question. How do you feel about the following scenarios? 2-2-2-2-1-7 playoff model, then the same bid as before, but includes the stipulation if you only play FBS schools, no FCS games, and go 13-0, then you get an auto bid as well.
No, too complicated.
Agreed.
Too complicated. Fans would hate. It's not. You'd spend half the time just describing the format before you could even talk about who is going to be in. Too confusing.
You'd never get it. You'd never get any school to sign up to play 13 games against FBS schools.
I mean, some do it. He's just talking about the FCS game, the one the one East Podunk State, taking them out of it. Yeah.
You'd also never get anybody to agree to 2-2-2-2, like the two representatives from each of the Power Four. I don't see anyone agreeing to that.
And also, then would you just cancel the championship game?
No, you'd have 2 and 3 play for that second spot. Your regular season winner would go in, and then you'd have a play-in game for the second spot.
I'd still have an issue with the 2-2-2-2 only because I don't know that there would always be just earn your place in. Again, we keep talking about it, but I don't know that there necessarily is 2 teams from every conference that would always deserve to be in.
Yeah. I agree.
All right, that's the end of the football portion of the mailbag. Moving on to the basketball portion of the mailbag, where there is one question. Coming off the spring AAU circuit, are you hearing any names yet of guys to watch for fall visits?
Not really, because they were only allowed to go out for one weekend. So I don't think anything has really been etched in stone yet. There's a couple weekends this month that they can go out and take in like high school type events and camps, and then the 2 open weekends in July. I don't really think, the way things work anymore, I don't think you'll see any movement until we get into July, probably, on that front.
All right. Hurry up and wait.
Yep.
That ends the basketball portion of the mailbag. Moving on to the baseball portion of the mailbag, where there's actually 2 questions. We've never had more questions in the baseball portion of the mailbag than any other mailbag. But any updates on the stadium naming rights?
No. I don't have any.
That's an easy question. And any chance UC gets a radio or streaming audio broadcast next year?
I mean, they do the games most of the games are on ESPN Plus. That's probably as good as you're going to get. Although I will say there's the, possibility you see somebody jump in with the success that they had this year, that somebody wants to get involved, but it's just a lot of money to put that together for a baseball season. So I don't think so, but I could be wrong on that front. If I hear any different, I'll let you know.
Man, these are some deep questions. And the last, that ends the baseball portion of the mailbag. Moving on to the banks. One question in the banks. This might actually be our deepest question of the night. What food combo that you make now or made as a kid that was weird or unconventional?
Wow, love the question. Wow. All right, let me think.
I don't know that I did anything weird.
When
Yeah,
I
I
was
don't
dipping
know
French
that
fries
either.
in Frosties once upon a time, I was looked at like a crazy person, and that is mainstream now.
Everyone
Yeah,
does that, yeah.
But that wasn't a thing when we were kids.
No, it's mainstream now.
Oh, I know. I've got one.
What's that?
School lunch. We always used it like once a week. I said it had to be once a week. We had chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes. And one time, accidentally, the barbecue sauce got into the mashed potatoes a little bit and took a bite of the mashed potatoes with barbecue sauce.
Really good.
And it was delicious.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then just a little swirl of barbecue sauce that got mixed in the mashed potatoes at lunch, as well as having the barbecue sauce for chicken nuggets. Just thought of it. That would be, I guess that's weird. People don't consider barbecue sauce and mashed potatoes to go together, but I thought it was phenomenal.
Not so fast, my friend, because when I do a smoked meatloaf and have the barbecue sauce covering it, you better believe I'm eating that shit with some mashed potatoes.
Yeah, it's good. It's delicious. I think it tastes great. It's not less filling, but it tastes great.
Okay. Royer, I know you got one down there.
I don't. I really I didn't do anything unconventional that I can even think of right now.
Chicken, rice, broccoli.
Yeah. Steamed fish.
Yeah, I wish I ate that good. I would have looked a little bit better. But I didn't do anything insane.
Peanuts and Coca-Cola. That's a South thing, right? Like that's a Southern thing where the
boiled peanuts.
Yeah,
I
think that's a Southern thing.
The Meat Church guy was doing that on a video on Twitter today.
Okay,
I saw that.
Did you guys like salami rolls? Was that weird? Like cream cheese?
Oh, I love salami rolls.
Okay.
Oh,
I took those to a Super Bowl party one time, and all my friends looked at me like I was like literally.
Oh, I could eat 1,000 salami rolls. Kelly
that's
used to
because-
make them all the time.
Yeah.
But
I was just gonna say, Brent, that's because salami rolls are like something normal people do, not people who go to cotillion.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
no, Kelly would make salami rolls, and I would eat like 12 of those bad boys while she was making them. Like, I got to test these out and make sure. I don't know. I didn't. That one might have been. That might not have been up to snuff. I'll have to try another one and make sure
Right.
these are good. And then I'd get the hand slap by about the fourth or fifth one, and then you got to get sneaky and like wait for her to set them down because her hands are getting tired. And then you. Oh, I love salami rolls.
Snag 'em.
You brought a lower class appetizer to an upper class function, and people looked at you like you were crazy.
Man.
Did they eat them? Because as soon as they ate one, they ate the whole damn thing.
Oh, they
Damn
loved
right
them.
they ate 'em.
They loved them. They said, "Brent, you gonna bring some more salami rolls?" I said,
Yeah.
yeah, man. We had these at my family reunion one time, and I can't get enough of them. Golly, they're tasty.
Brent, you are not invited to the cookout.
Sometimes you put like maybe some like mozzarella cheese on a plate and just heat it up in the microwave and eat it. You know.
Well, you want to spice it up now, Brent. You want to spice it up now. You know what people are doing, right? They're taking
What's that?
cream cheese and smoking
Okay.
it.
Oh,
They're taking cream cheese blocks and they're putting like a barbecue rub on top of the cream cheese,
yeah.
and then you put the cream cheese on smoker for like an hour,
Mm.
and then you take the cream cheese and make salami.
Okay.
Or there's different like preservatives or jams that you can put on it, like
Yeah.
aiolis, all sorts of different things you can do to smoke it and have a different flavor.
Spectacular. Yeah, it kind of along the same lines as you, Chad, and kind of what Brady Collins used to have. Wow, look at us talking about Brady Collins for the third straight BBP. Someone let BC know. When he would mix applesauce with his cottage cheese. I love mixing barbecue sauce with my cottage cheese, and boy, oh boy, it's tasty.
That's better than applesauce. Applesauce and cottage cheese is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen from any human. And BC got it every day at Higher Ground. A whole plate. A whole plate.
Every doggone day.
Blech. Blech.
That's the mailbag, Brent. Get us out of here.
You know what, guys? We had a very, 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 very special guest join us, an old friend, and one of those guys that we know for a long time, and we still know him, and it comes on. It's just like we seen him last week. It's a man, the myth, the legend, senior writer for The Athletic, Justin Williams. Shouts to him for coming on the show. Shouts to Danco, Transitionautica. Shouts to Cincy Light here in the Cincy Light Studios. Shouts to Quick Paper Supply. Chad, what is it? The Canes 10 and under baseball.
Yeah, tryouts.
Lock in. That sounds like
Call Nick 513-470-2029 to lock in for the tryouts.
Boom, baby. But you know what, guys? It was a fun Monday night. So for my pals, for the crew, for the squad, for Aaron Smith, for Chad Brendel, for Ryan Royer, and Brent Young, yet again another fantastic BBP presented by BearcatJournal.com.
See ya.